Hello YouTube. Alright, so this is going to be part 2 of my diamond stitch pattern that I'm going to be working on. What I've decided to be my crossroads seat. I'm just doing the diamond stitch part at the moment, and then I'll get ready to get all the measurements and everything taken off and make a pattern for doing the rest of it. So on this one, what I'm going to do is I actually decided I think I want to go ahead and go with just a single stitch instead of doing a double stitch on this part, and then everything else on the seat I'm going to do a double stitch line on the outside of. So it'll look more like this. This is the example of, this is my first attempt, so it's not the greatest, but it'll look more like this going down the sides with just a single stitch going across. So that's the goal. Let's see if we can do it. Right now I've got about half of a bobbin in here, so I'm only going to do a couple of short runs and then I'll have to do a bobbin change. I've got 2 full bobbins over here ready to go. Plenty of thread up here to do what I need to do here. So if you're curious on how to do the diamond pattern, look at my part 1 video on this and it should give you a way to do it. There may be better ways than what I did, but this may be a simple way for you. So I'm going to start with probably this corner edge here, and we're going to start going across. And I'm going to follow right on the line that I did. And I'm not locking in on this one on the end pieces because, like I said, I'm gonna make a pattern and I'll sew in and lock in once I know where they're gonna be. You won't really see a bunch of the pleating until it really gets to go in the opposite direction as well at first, so don't freak out if it's not like that. And also always check your tension. I already rechecked everything to do this, and I had that on a video that's kind of in between. I guess it's gonna be part 1.5, showing how to do a tension test on a piece of this fabric with this exact foam underneath it. I think I should have enough, hopefully, in my bobbin to go ahead, and I'm going to try this next line and then I'm going to change bobbin so I know I have enough to do the rest. I've been working on a few small projects in between. They're just kind of testing things and checking things out. So far, looking at everything, I don't have any missed stitches, so that's looking good.
So why couldn't you just do the pressure foot turn?
You can do a pressure foot turn and keep going, but I would like to, since this is such a big piece, I'm trying to just keep it straight in. And that's up to you on what you want to do on that. There's always more than one way of doing things, and if that's the way that you would want to do it, that's great. I'm just trying to focus on making as straight a lines as possible at this point. But that gamble was a successful one, and I didn't run out of bobbin thread.
It's sticking up pretty well.
Yeah, it's pleating, and it'll look way better when we have the other side going, but I don't want to risk it running out of thread. So I'm going to go ahead and take my magnet. Yep, so I still had enough probably to do some of the smaller ones on the side over there. But for the continuity of this, I'm just going to go ahead and redo this. But it's showing barely through. I don't know if that shows up very well or not. There's still quite a bit there, but it's not it's not what I want to do. What I want to be. I don't want to run out on the middle of one of these long stretches. So I'm going to go ahead and just get this next one loaded in. Make sure you don't forget your tension spring. And on mine, I found I go through the first hole toward the screw and then the back hole outside of the screw to get the tension to be where I want it to be. And go ahead and load this back in. Close that off. A couple rotations. Sometimes it's a little difficult to get it to pop out of there, but I got it. And it's stabbed through that. So I'm going to re-thread the needle as well. Good. Nice fresh thread, so there's no breaking. Haircut on there. Okay, so let's use the test piece that I have laying over here. Check and make sure everything's staying where I want it to. I always recommend running the test piece between changes of threads, if it's a bobbin or the top. Anything that you do that makes a change to the machine. Waste a ton of thread doing it, but I'm gonna use enough to see what I'm doing. So my thread pattern looks to be the same stitches as it is on that. So this is not just a decorative stitch, it actually does help hold the fabric to the foam. There's spray adhesive also, but that's what we're going to go ahead and use. We're going to take off and get this neck piece going. It's always good to stop at any point. That's what I like about this hand crank. It's always good to stop at any point and see how things are looking. And it's a whole lot like it is in life when you're checking on your friends. You know, you look at this machine like it's your friend. When you know you have friends that are from, like I said, my background. If you're new to my channel, you'll know that I'm trying to bring up mental health as much as I can as well. But doing mental health checks, doing checks on yourself, but checks on your friends, checks on people around you, make sure that you're looking for warning signs that everything's running okay. As we can see, there are no warning signs on this piece so far. It's all looking like it's running okay. The stitching length is all staying the way I want it to, so I'm going to go ahead and keep on. I want to call this kind of the halfway point, and once we start getting here, we're going to start running into the corner of this on the edge of the machine, and we can roll this like any other kind of fabric, but it's a little bit more, it's not rigid, but it's definitely not as easy to move around as just a regular piece of vinyl with no backer on it. So if these were just normal pleats, that's the chalk line, which one of my commenters definitely has a good point, and I'm going to be doing this, but I'm going to go to Tandy Leather, and they said there's some markers that I can use to mark on this stuff. It's a lot easier to deal with the chalk. But if it wasn't for the chalk lines, you could start to see a lot of the pleating. I guess when I move it like that, you can start to see how it really makes a nice, even look. And the lines are pretty straight. They're not as straight as a professional, but I'm by far no professional. I'm just a hobbyist that is trying to do this. So like I said, I started messing with this as just a way to kind of clear my head when I'm thinking about too much. And you got to focus on this. It's a lot of things. You got to really focus on what you're doing to make it look right, and you got to practice a lot. So
without a back stitch, that means that this can just pull out. Right?
So on this, you could pull the whole thing out without a back stitch. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and once I get my,
you go to every single end and back stitch.
I'm going to cross over once I find them, and it probably will, just because my worry about that happening. I'll probably will go ahead and go back through, but I'm going to tighten up my distance of my thread as well, but they really get locked in there. But you can also use super glue, a drop of super glue on the back side of it, and it will soak into it. And that's just from what little I've learned about sewing. My aunt actually taught me how to use a regular Singer sewing machine, and she's no longer with me, but she was a really good teacher, and I really appreciate what she taught me. And nowhere near as good as she is, but hopefully I can do her proud on this one. Now that I'm past the halfway point, I'm going to go ahead and start working away from my work. And I'm sure some of you that find this will be very experienced veterans in working in upholstery, and you'll see all kinds of flaws that I'm doing, and I really would appreciate any comments that you want to put in there that I can use. And I prefer constructive criticism, not just straight up criticism of stuff, but it is what it is. I'm not going to get my feelings hurt, but I appreciate any kind of good insight I can use. So if something looks a little bit off about this, I'm going to be okay with it as long as it still looks better than what I have. What I have right now is really tore up, so anything's going to look better than that. One of the things that I really like about it is I'm going to be able to say, when someone asks me, where'd you get that seat, I'll be like, well, I made it. So I actually went through, redid the foam, redid the vinyl, and made it to how I want it to be. And my bike is black. Everything about it's black, so that's why I'm using black thread on the top thread. I just want it to be completely blacked out. Okay, so listening to my machine, I can start to hear when things, and I can start to feel when things are getting a little bit rough. I don't have the label on this because the label comes off real, the label doesn't work very good, but this stuff is called Gibbs, and it is absolutely the best stuff that I've ever used when it comes to getting things, machine parts lubed up and working the way they need to be. I'm going to spray a little bit everywhere where anything's going to be rubbing against. And I've already marked my cams and everything with a punch. I had a guy that said it would be easier to use fingernail polish, and yeah, it would definitely be easier. But the reason I went this way is I went ahead and I wanted to make it a little bit more permanent, because the stuff that I'm using, it would immediately take the fingernail polish off. It just would get in between it and the metal, and it would be one time and that would be it. And I don't know that I could ever get fingernail polish to stick to it, because it takes a lot to get this stuff off of it. It also is really good cleaner. It takes that cosmoline that these things come packaged in right off, but this stuff's pretty expensive. Somebody else asked how did I get the grease off of it. My father-in-law actually, I traded a whole beer making kit. I don't do that anymore, and he gave me this, just the machine, and I made the bench, the tabletop for it, and made it to where it fits me well. But I've gotten a lot of stuff from overseas that has the cosmoline on it, and what I found works the cheapest and the fastest is just getting a little mason jar full of diesel and putting a paintbrush in it and just painting it on there, let it sit, just keep on doing that, and it'll run right off. And then you can go through there and remove the diesel with a little bit of acetone or whatever you want to use that's a little bit more harsh, but the acetone probably would take the paint off. The diesel's not. I mean, I would just use diesel and then wipe it down real good, but diesel's got a lot of good cleaning agents in it already. But I'm sure there's a lot of different ways that you guys have found to get that stuff off of here. But the name of that greasy stuff is called cosmoline. I do know that. So. More than halfway done. So I know this is going to be a bit longer of a video, and if you're still here watching it, I appreciate it. I understand if you jump around, but one of the things that I would like to do is I'd like to try to build more of a subscription base on here. So anybody who subscribes, leaves a comment, or gives me a thumbs up, at least I sure do appreciate that. And this isn't going to be my, obviously, I guarantee you this is not going to be my main source of trying to make a job or income from this. I'm going to mental health to help work with other combat veterans like myself to help find ways of getting out of those dark places and find trades and find ways to get out and do things. So hopefully we can keep on doing that. A bit repetitive, but it is what it is. You can kind of see the back. The back is almost easier to see how straight your lines are. So, I mean, there's a slight bit of waviness to it, but I've seen a lot of people put a motor on these, and I think that's a pretty cool idea. But for me, I really don't think I'll ever do that because I don't feel like it was made to have it, and I don't know what all I would have to change as far as the steel that's inside there to be able to handle the extra amount of stress that's going to put on it. It's not really going to put a bunch of stress on there, but you got to think it's going to be a lot more revolutions than you might normally would get, and the speed also is going to have something to do with that too. And I could crank this a lot faster with that Gibbs I'm using. It takes almost completely the amount of friction that I started with before I started using that. It's like literally 10 times better. But if you are going to put a motor on it, there's a lot of good videos out there of people that have done it, and there's a good Facebook group that have a lot of good files and documents on what to use and how they did it. Since we're not locking it in right now, and we will later, I'm just going to go ahead and cut off anything that could get hung up and cause it to have an issue. I don't want to leave any streamers or tails to catch on something. Alright, can't see this one on camera, I don't think, but I'm going to be on the last one that's going this direction. That's why I really appreciate that comment about getting the marker instead of the chalk. I wouldn't be having the visibility issues and be a lot straighter.
I bet Amazon has one.
Read what?
I bet Amazon has one.
Probably. Absolutely that. Pulled it right out. But the good news is I'll be able to stitch it right back in there. 'cause it's gonna follow. One thing about these machines that really amazes me is once you get them timed and set up right, they follow exactly the holes that you leave in there. I'm gonna go ahead and pinch hold that. All right. Now we're going to get to start seeing the diamonds finally. So I will try to see what is the time right now.
We're at 32 and it cuts you off at 58.
Okay, so 32 minutes. You can skip to 32 minutes if you want to start seeing the diamonds. I guess I'll try to put that in the front of the video. I usually don't edit anything so you can see me make mistakes and see how I fix them. But I might try to see if I can't put that in the description. I'll just put it in the description. And when you're not backstitching, make sure you grab the corner of your diamond when you're pulling it so you don't pull your thread out. Oh, look at that, we're running out of bobbin thread already. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull this one completely out because I ran out of bobbin thread. So I've got the holes already punched in it, so I'm just gonna make sure and set it up, and I'll go a lot slower on this run. So I'm gonna go ahead and fix this run here, but since my phone doesn't let me have a lot of time, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the video here and restart it and add it to it afterwards, and we'll go from there. Alright, I reloaded the bobbin, make sure all the tension was straight, and I've got to go back through and match it up to the holes, so this will be a little slower. Here at the corner on the edge where you just pull to where it just brings this top piece. You can see it moving it. And then you got all your tension out. Tails out of the way. Go ahead and go to the next one. I think what I'm going to do to keep from having to edit a whole lot on here is, and I'll start editing when I learn how. Like I said, I'm not at all a person that knows what they're doing as far as making YouTube videos goes. But I'm probably going to make part 1, part 2, and part 3. Part 2 would have been the one where we did the regular pleating, just the straight pleating, and then part 3 will be the actual diamond. This is what I'm going to call the halfway point on the diamond. It's looking pretty good for a novice beginner, in my opinion. When you go and let the tension off the thread to get it out of your needle, sometimes on my machine I've noticed it'll knock it out of the tensioner. It's very important that you get that back in there and pull it tight up into it. And I'm running it through just this bottom loop down here. Just a piece of tension. Flip it the other direction since I'm past that halfway point, so I'm not running into my machine like I was just a second ago. And right there appears to be it. stuff over here on the side I need to get out of the way. That was one of the whole a sheath I'm working on for the karambit and just playing around with it. I need to figure out a way. I'm sure that will just cut straight through the threads first time pull it out, but I was just seeing what it would do with a real lightweight leather, and it was working pretty good. I'm probably going to go ahead and just actually sew the original plastic sheath, basically a sheath around this, so it doesn't have a chance of cutting anything out. It'll be a little bit more resilient that way. But either way, I was still having fun messing with it, and that's why we get these things. I would imagine, other than the fact that they're $100 or thereabouts, like probably $130 after shipping for one that you got to work with yourself. I did hear that there is a company that sells these, and they already went through them and cleaned them up and polished everything up, and I don't think they're that much more expensive, and for some people it's probably way worth it. I'm really new to that Facebook group, and I cannot remember everybody's names or what the name of this company is. I would definitely look at the different Facebook groups on there and see if people join them, because they have a lot of valuable information on there.
It's only giving me 7 minutes left. If I can just pause it and play when you get to the last.
So I had to pause it because I'm running out of time on my phone. So I'm going to go ahead and do these last two. That's about as far as I know how to edit things, is just to stop it to give myself a little bit extra time. But everything has been exactly the same. Process on every stitch. All right, last one. Alright, we'll just make sure and cut the tails off. Now I'm just going to wipe the chalk off. To get the chalk out of the deep spots, I'm just going to take some of this regular 91% isopropyl alcohol, put it on a rag, and then just drag it down the seams and clean them. But that's pretty much what you get. This is just one layer of foam. This is 2 layers of foam, and that's a lot more cushion. So put it on something hard, actually. That versus that. Like I said, the new pattern, the pattern that I put down, I'll sew around it with a lot tighter stitch, and then also over that will just be decorative, but that tighter stitch will lock in all these stitches to keep them from coming out. So, but thank you for watching, and once again, if you are a veteran in crisis and you don't want to talk to anybody that's a friend or family, call 988 and press 1. It does work. I've called it myself. They're not trying to get the cops after you, they're just trying to get you help, and there's going to be work that you'll have to do also, as in actually going to the appointments, but it's good to do. And your friends, even if you think you don't have any, almost everybody's got more friends than they know they have. People would rather go see you and spend time with you than go to your funeral. They would rather stop and listen to your concerns and talks rather than hear a eulogy. So call 988, press 1, take care of yourself. You'll have a great day. Thank you.